It started on a Wednesday. The kind of day where the Georgia sky hovered between warm sunshine and gray skies that never quite made up their mind. A restless breeze danced through the playground outside, rattling loose leaves against the windows of Mrs. Parker's fifth-grade class at Southside Elementary. "Okay, everyone, settle down," Mrs. Parker said, tapping a stack of papers on her desk. "Let's keep working on our career day assignments. Remember, tomorrow is the big day." A murmur rippled through the room, some groaned, others buzzed with excitement. A tall boy in the back blurted, "My dad's bringing his firefighter uniform." A girl in braids added, "My mom's a nurse. She's bringing candy." Then came the question that would change everything. Mrs. Parker smiled, brushing a hand through her copper-red curls. "Malik," she said, her voice sweet but carrying that "don't you dare tell me you forgot" tone. "What about you? What does your mom do?" The room quieted just a little. All eyes turned to the quiet boy in the second row. He always sat a little too straight, like he was trying not to take up too much space. His sneakers were scuffed, his hoodie a bit too big. Malik Johnson looked up from his drawing, lines and loops and tiny letters across the page that no one ever saw. He paused, then said, softly but clearly, "She works at NASA." The silence was sharp for half a second. Then someone snorted. A boy from the back shouted, "Sure she does. And my grandma's in the Avengers." Laughter exploded across the room like a shaken-up soda can. Even Mrs. Parker, who tried to hush the noise, cracked a tiny, uncertain smile. Malik's ears burned. He dropped his eyes to his paper and scribbled harder. "She's probably the janitor," someone muttered behind him. "Or she just says that," another kid whispered. "My cousin lies all the time too." He didn't respond. He didn't even look up. He just kept drawing, pencil pressed too hard against the paper, making little rocket ships crash into stars. Mrs. Parker finally called for order. "That's enough, class. That's not very respectful." But the damage was done. The giggles still buzzed like mosquitoes in the background. Malik sat frozen, like he could disappear if he held still enough. Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. This story might just spark a new beginning. What's one thing that always pushes you forward, even when things get tough? The rest of the day passed like honey, slow and sticky. At recess, Malik stayed on the far side of the field, sitting on the wooden bench near the fence. He watched the other kids chasing each other, playing tag, kicking soccer balls. Emma, his only real friend, sat next to him, swinging her legs. "You okay?" she asked. Malik nodded, but his lips stayed sealed. "They're just dumb," she added after a while. "They don't know anything." He shrugged. "Doesn't matter." "Yes it does," she said firmly. "Your mom's cool. You told me she works on rockets and stuff." "Yeah," Malik said, but the fire in his voice had flickered out. "Nobody believes me. They think I made it up." Emma was quiet for a beat. Then she said, "Well, they'll see. Someday." Malik didn't answer. He just looked up at the sky, wide and bright and so far away. Almost as far as Cape Canaveral felt right now. When the final bell rang, Malik walked home alone. Their apartment was just 4 blocks away, tucked behind a grocery store and a bus stop. Ava Johnson, his mom, wouldn't be home for a while. She always worked late. She had to. NASA didn't exactly run on a 9 to 5. He let himself in with the spare key under the flower pot and tossed his backpack on the couch. Their place was neat, small, and always smelled faintly like lemon-scented cleaner. A stack of space magazines sat on the coffee table, half covered by Malik's homework folder. He went straight to his room. The walls were decorated with rocket posters and solar system charts. One corner held his prized possession, a 3D model of the Mars rover he and his mom built together last summer. He picked it up gently, turning the wheels with his fingers. He remembered how proud she looked when they finished it. "You've got an engineer's brain, baby," she'd said, kissing his forehead. "Just like your mama." But now those words felt like dreams someone else had whispered. Later that evening, the front door clicked open. "Malik?" Ava's voice floated in, followed by the sound of heels clicking and a purse hitting the counter. "I brought Thai food." He didn't answer. She popped her head into his room a moment later. "You okay?" "Fine." "You're quiet." He shrugged. "School all right?" "Yeah." Ava frowned, walking in and sitting beside him on the bed. She was still in her work clothes, navy slacks, blouse, her ID badge from the Marshall Space Flight Center still clipped to her collar. She reached out, brushing his curls back from his forehead. "I know something's up," she said. "Talk to me." There was a long pause before Malik finally muttered, "They laughed." Ava's smile faded. "Who did?" "My class. When I told them where you work." The air went still. He looked up at her, eyes full of something halfway between shame and anger. "They don't believe me. They think I'm lying. One kid said you probably just clean floors there." Ava's jaw clenched, just a little. But when she spoke, her voice was calm. "Do you believe me?" "Yes." "Then that's all that matters." She paused. "But I'll tell you what. Tomorrow, I'm gonna take a long lunch." Malik blinked. "What?" "I'm coming to career day." He sat up straighter. "You don't have to do that." "Oh, I absolutely do," she said, standing up. "Let's give them a little science lesson." Malik wasn't sure whether to feel nervous or excited. Probably both. That night, long after the dishes were cleaned and the lights were off, Malik lay in bed staring at the ceiling. Outside, a distant airplane crossed the sky, blinking red and white. He watched it until it disappeared. His mom worked at NASA. She wasn't a janitor. She didn't lie. She was a rocket scientist. And maybe, just maybe, tomorrow, the whole world would know. The next morning came too soon. Malik sat at the kitchen table in his usual spot, his cereal growing soggy while he stared blankly at the news playing softly on the small TV on the counter. The local anchor was talking about an upcoming rocket launch from Cape Canaveral, some NASA mission, maybe Artemis again. Under normal circumstances, Malik would have leaned forward, eyes wide, asking his mom a dozen questions. But not today. He just stirred his spoon in slow, circular motions, like he was trying to erase something. Ava watched him over the rim of her coffee mug. She was dressed in her standard work clothes, sharp blazer, slacks, ID badge clipped on like armor. But this morning, she didn't feel like a scientist. She felt like a mom with a cracked heart. "You ready for today?" she asked gently. He didn't answer right away. "I guess." "You want me to pick you up after school?" she offered. "We can go get ice cream or hit the comic store." He shook his head, barely above a whisper. "I'm fine." Ava exhaled slowly. "Okay." She didn't push. She knew better. Malik wasn't the type to explode. He went quiet instead. When the world hurt, he folded himself inward like paper, flat, silent, fragile. It killed her every time. Malik walked to school alone, head down, hoodie up. As he reached the front gate, he passed by a group of kids tossing a football. One of them, the same kid who'd mocked him yesterday, called out. "Hey NASA boy! You bring your spaceship today?" More laughter. Malik didn't flinch. He just kept walking. Not because it didn't hurt, God, it did, but because he'd already replayed the moment 1,000 times in his mind, and there were no new outcomes. He was used to it now. Used to being the kid who liked stars more than sneakers. The one who corrected teachers about black holes in 3rd grade. The one who spent recess with his nose in a notebook sketching boosters and re-entry diagrams. The one no one believed. Inside the classroom, Miss Parker was her usual chipper self. "Don't forget, career day is this afternoon. We'll start right after lunch. Parents will be arriving around 1 o'clock." A few kids cheered. Malik sunk deeper into his seat. All morning he said nothing. Not during math. Not during reading groups. Not even when Emma tried to hand him a joke scribbled on a sticky note. He smiled politely, but it didn't reach his eyes. Emma didn't push him. She knew the quiet Malik, the one who processed the world a little slower, a little deeper. She'd known him since kindergarten, back when he brought a shoebox with a solar system model made from painted ping-pong balls. Everyone else thought he was weird. She thought he was brilliant. At lunch, Malik sat with Emma near the end of the cafeteria table. He pushed his tray around without eating. "Do you think she's really coming?" he asked finally, so quiet it was almost a breath. Emma nodded. "Yeah. I think so." He swallowed hard. What if they laugh again? Then they're idiots. He smiled a little, but it faded quickly. What if she embarrasses me? Emma leaned forward. "Dude. Your mom works at NASA. Literally builds rockets. The only thing embarrassing would be if she doesn't show up." Malik nodded, but he still felt like the walls of the cafeteria were pressing in. What if they called her a liar, too? What if she came, and no one clapped, and they just laughed again? What if she looked at him afterward with that tired smile that said, "It's okay," even when it clearly wasn't? He'd seen it before. Too many times. Ava Johnson, meanwhile, was staring at the elevator numbers in the NASA Marshall Space Flight Center, heart pounding harder than usual. She'd taken personal time for this. No meetings. No check-ins. No labs. Just one mission. She'd swapped her usual outfit for something sharper, a navy blue NASA blazer, silver pin on the lapel, and black pants that looked like they belonged in a boardroom. Her name badge glinted under the overhead lights. Dr. Ava Johnson. Senior Aerospace Navigation Systems Engineer. The title didn't stop the nerves. She wasn't nervous about public speaking, she did it all the time. She'd presented to teams of engineers, military advisors, even senators once. But none of that compared to standing in front of a group of 11-year-olds trying to convince them that your son wasn't a liar. Back at school, the classroom buzzed with excitement. Parents had started arriving, some in uniform, others in suits, some in simple clothes and kind smiles. They carried props, PowerPoint presentations, posters, and goodie bags. One dad set up a dental hygiene station. Another pulled out plastic handcuffs and gave a bad guy demonstration with his kid. Malik sat stiffly in his chair, glancing at the door every 5 seconds. Still no mom. Ms. Parker moved around the room like a talk show host, introducing parents with flair. "And this is Jason's mom, she's a veterinarian. And here's Mia's dad, he's a paramedic." Malik folded his hands on his lap and waited. 1:05. 1:10. No Ava. His heart started to sink. In the front office, Ava signed in at the visitor log. She was 10 minutes behind, traffic and a last-minute call from a junior engineer. But she was here. The secretary handed her a visitor badge. She pinned it on and smoothed her blazer. Took one long breath. And walked. Malik was staring at the floor when it happened. The door opened. Ms. Parker paused, then smiled politely. "And now, we have one more guest. Please welcome Dr. Ava Johnson." There was a weird hush. The kind of silence that falls just before lightning. Malik's head jerked up. And there she was. In the doorway. Cool, collected. Wearing that deep NASA blue, name badge shining. She wasn't carrying a bag of candy. She wasn't smiling nervously. She wasn't apologizing for being late. She looked like she walked off a launch pad. Every eye in the room followed her as she stepped inside. Malik's mouth went dry. Then he saw it, just the tiniest wink she shot at him. And for the first time in days, something flickered in his chest. Something like fire. There are moments in life where time seems to pause. Not like a movie freeze frame, no dramatic music, no slow motion. Just a kind of stillness that settles in your chest. A pause between who you were and who you're about to become. That's what it felt like when Dr. Ava Johnson walked into her son's classroom. She didn't hesitate. She didn't shuffle nervously or fumble with her notes. She moved with the kind of presence that filled the space before she even spoke. Her heels clicked with quiet authority on the tile floor, and she stood at the front of the classroom like she'd stood at the front of a launch briefing. Malik couldn't look away. Neither could anyone else. Ms. Parker, clearly flustered by Ava's confident entrance, adjusted her glasses and cleared her throat. "Well, thank you for coming, Dr. Johnson," she said. "Would you like to tell the students what you do for a living?" Ava smiled politely, but there was something behind it, calm, cool, but unmistakably strong. The kind of smile that said, "I've been underestimated before. Let's begin." She looked around at the students. "Good afternoon, everyone." A few kids mumbled, "Hi." Some just stared. "I'm Dr. Ava Johnson. I'm an aerospace systems engineer at NASA. Specifically, I work in the Navigation and Flight Systems division. That means I help design the systems that keep spacecraft on course, whether they're heading to the Moon, Mars, or back home." Dead silence. Someone dropped a pencil. No one moved to pick it up. Malik could feel the blood rushing in his ears. Ava continued, now walking slowly past the desks, holding up a small silver device that looked like something out of a sci-fi movie. "This," she said, "is a gyroscopic stabilizer prototype. It's used in guidance systems. You know how astronauts stay on course while they're floating in space? This helps with that." A hand shot up. "Wait, like, you really work on spaceships?" Ava nodded. "Yes. My team helped design parts of the Artemis spacecraft, and we're currently developing navigation tools for future Mars missions." Another hand. "Is that the rocket that's going to the moon again?" "That's the one," Ava confirmed, her smile growing more genuine. "It's the most powerful rocket NASA's built since Saturn V. And guess what?" She paused. "We're doing it with people who look like me. And people who might look like you." The class stared, wide-eyed. Malik watched as the same kids who laughed yesterday were now leaning forward in their seats, captivated. There was no mocking now. No smirks. Just curiosity and awe. He glanced at Ms. Parker. Her expression had changed, too. No more polite smiles. Now it was disbelief turning into realization. Back when Ava was Malik's age, she was told space wasn't for girls. Especially not black girls. She remembered her third-grade teacher telling her to pick something more realistic. She remembered the boys at her middle school laughing when she said she wanted to go to MIT. She remembered filling out FAFSA forms in the dark with only candlelight because the electricity had been cut off again. She remembered it all. And she remembered swearing that one day, she'd walk into a room like this and change what kids thought was possible. Another student raised a hand, a shy girl in the corner. "Did it take you a long time to get that job?" Ava smiled warmly. "It took me a long time to get the education that let me do this job. I studied really hard, I made mistakes, and I got back up again. I went to MIT for my degree in aerospace engineering. That's in Boston." "Whoa," a boy whispered. Ava continued, "I was one of only a handful of black women in my program. Sometimes, people assumed I wasn't supposed to be there. But I knew what I was capable of. And I had a reason to keep going. She looked at Malik. He met her eyes. He didn't blink. That reason was my son. Malik felt his heart pound. He didn't care who was watching anymore. That was his mom. And she was everything he said she was. And more. One boy finally said what everyone else had been thinking. I thought you were just, like, a janitor or something. Several kids froze, unsure of how to react. But Ava just laughed, soft, low, and not the least bit offended. I've heard that one before, she said with a twinkle in her eye. Let me tell you something, there's nothing wrong with being a janitor. But you should never assume someone's value based on what they look like. The room went silent again. I wear this badge because I earned it, she said, tapping her NASA ID. But you don't need a badge to be smart, or kind, or worthy. Ms. Parker cleared her throat again. Dr. Johnson, thank you for that incredible presentation. Would you be willing to answer a few more questions? Ava nodded. Absolutely. Hands shot up like fireworks. Do you get to meet astronauts? Have you ever been inside a rocket? Are you gonna go to space? Can you take us to space? Ava laughed. One at a time. But I love the enthusiasm. Malik slowly raised his hand. Ms. Parker looked surprised. Yes, Malik. He stood up. Just a little. My mom and I built a rover model last summer. We used real NASA schematics. She showed me how the solar panels worked. Ava turned to him, eyes soft. That's right, she said. And he figured out the wheel suspension system better than some of my interns. Gasps. Laughter, this time, the good kind. Malik sat back down, glowing. By the time the bell rang, the room was buzzing. Kids crowded around Ava, peppering her with more questions. One even asked for an autograph. Ms. Parker thanked her several times, her tone now laced with admiration, not polite doubt. Emma gave Malik a high five. Told you, she whispered. He grinned. For the first time in a long time, the weight on his chest felt lighter. He didn't have to shrink himself anymore. That night, back at home, Ava made spaghetti while Malik sat at the counter scrolling through a class group chat. Someone had posted a picture of Ava at the front of the room, holding the gyroscope. The caption, Malik's mom is a rocket scientist. No cap. Another kid commented, can she come back next week? He turned the phone so Ava could see. She smiled. That's new. Malik nodded. They think you're cool now. Ava twirled spaghetti onto his plate. Took them long enough. They laughed. And for the first time in days, it wasn't forced. The next day, the air at Southside Elementary was different. Not louder. Not quieter. Just, different. Malik noticed it as soon as he walked through the front doors. The hallway chatter hushed slightly when he passed by. Not in a mean way, more like a mix of curiosity and second thoughts. Yo, that's NASA kid, someone whispered. His mom's a legit scientist. Man, I thought he was just making stuff up. Malik didn't react much. He kept walking, backpack slung over one shoulder, hood down for once. But inside, something small and stubborn was glowing, like a pilot light finally catching fire. At his locker, Emma popped up beside him. You're kind of famous now. He gave her a look. It's weird. It's awesome. She was right, though. Kids who never even looked at him before were suddenly saying, hey, in the hallway. One girl asked if he could help her with her science fair project. Another kid tried to show off his model of the International Space Station, made out of Legos. Malik didn't mind. Not exactly. But something about it felt off. It wasn't that he didn't like the attention, it was that none of it came before someone else validated him. They didn't believe him. They only believed his mom. And that made all the difference. When they got to class, Mrs. Parker was at her desk grading papers. Her back straight, her hair tighter in its bun than usual. Her smile was there, sure, but it was the polite kind. The kind that never quite reached the eyes. "Good morning, class," she said without looking up. "Let's all take our seats and get started on our writing reflections from yesterday's career day." Malik sat down, unsure what to expect. "I want each of you to write 3 paragraphs about your favorite speaker and what you learned from them," she continued. "Make sure to use proper grammar, full sentences, and describe what inspired you the most." Hands started moving, pencils scratching against paper. But Malik just sat there, frozen. He waited for something. A look, a nod, "Your mom was amazing yesterday." Nothing. Not even a glance. Mrs. Parker moved on like Ava Johnson hadn't just come in and blown the roof off the room. Malik looked around. Other kids were already writing furiously. One even whispered to another, "I'm doing the NASA mom." Duh. But when Malik looked up at Mrs. Parker again, he caught it. A flicker. Not anger. Not annoyance. Just something guarded. Careful. Like she was trying very hard not to react. That smile. It was still there. But it wasn't for him. After lunch, Ms. Parker called Malik over to her desk while the others worked on math. He approached slowly, confused. "Yes, ma'am." She looked at him with the same warm but walled-off expression she always wore when dealing with difficult students. "I just wanted to touch base about your behavior yesterday." Malik blinked. "My behavior?" "Yes. During the presentation," she said, lowering her voice like she was being generous. "I know it must have felt exciting to have your mother come in, but we don't interrupt other students' questions, okay?" I raised my hand. "And that was good," she said quickly. "But let's try not to dominate the spotlight next time." Dominating the spotlight? Malik felt a knot twist in his stomach. "I just wanted to talk about the rover." "I understand. But it's important we give everyone equal time to share," she said, her voice calm, controlled, professional. "Let's keep the focus on learning, not just impressing others." There it was again. That smile. The kind that says I'm the adult and this is for your own good, but actually means you need to remember your place. After class, Malik didn't say much. Not to Emma. Not to anyone. He walked home with his hands jammed in his pockets, his hoodie back over his head. The glow from yesterday? Gone. Extinguished by the soft press of a teacher's smile. That evening, Ava was running a bit late. She walked in juggling her phone, car keys, and a half-eaten protein bar, tossing her bag on the kitchen counter. "Hey baby, how was school?" she asked as she kicked off her heels. Malik shrugged from the couch. "Everything okay?" "Yeah." She looked at him, really looked. "You sure?" He nodded. But something in his voice felt tight, off. She knew that tone. The retreat. The beginning of the fold. So she waited. And waited. Until finally, right before bed, he blurted it out. "Mrs. Parker pulled me aside today. Said I was showing off." Ava looked up sharply from the sink where she was rinsing a glass. "What?" "She said I dominated the spotlight or whatever." "What does that even mean?" Malik shrugged. "I guess she didn't like me talking about the rover." Ava dried her hands, walked over, sat beside him on the edge of the bed. "You were proud." "I thought I did good." "You did do good." They sat in silence for a moment. Then Malik asked the one question she wasn't ready for. "Why didn't she believe me until you showed up?" Ava exhaled slowly. "That's a long answer, baby. I've got time." She looked at him then, her heart breaking in the way only mothers know. "It's not always about truth," she said finally. Sometimes it's about what people expect. They expected I was lying. They expected something easier to believe. Something smaller. Malik's voice was quiet. Like a janitor. She didn't flinch. Or someone invisible, she said. Someone they could brush off. But I told them, he whispered. I told them and they didn't care. I know. She pulled him into her arms, kissed his hair. You don't have to be small just because other people can't see big. The next morning, Malik walked into class a little different. He didn't talk much. He didn't shrink either. He watched. He listened. And when Ms. Parker passed out papers for the next assignment, he caught the glance she gave him, the same soft smile, the same neutral tone. But now he saw it for what it was. Not kindness. Not warmth. Control. Kids talk. Always have, always will. But there's a difference between playground whispers and full-on rumor wildfire. And by Thursday morning, Malik's name was floating down every hallway, tangled up in 100 different versions of the truth. Did you hear NASA kid's mom works for the government? No, she's like an astronaut or something. She's been to space. Someone said she's not even really his mom. She just showed up for attention. Malik heard it all. Some of it made him roll his eyes. Some of it made his stomach twist. And one thing he noticed, the tone had changed again. This wasn't curiosity anymore. It was doubt. Resentment, even. People didn't like it when someone went from underdog to spotlight overnight. Especially when that someone looked like him. At recess, Malik sat alone on the swings. Emma was homesick, and without her, everything felt 10 degrees colder. A group of kids played kickball nearby, but no one called for him to join. Not even Jalen, the boy who used to sit next to him in science and once asked to borrow his moon phase chart. Now Jalen stood with a group of boys, eyeing Malik as he spoke low and fast, like he was telling a ghost story. Malik couldn't hear every word. But he caught enough. I'm just saying, it's weird. Why'd she show up all dramatic? Bet she just Googled some rocket stuff. It hit harder than it should have. Malik turned his face away and stared at the gravel. He didn't want to cry. Not here. Not again. Inside, behind the staff room door, Mrs. Parker sipped her tea slowly. She was talking to another teacher, Ms. Carmen, the 5th grade writing instructor. Young, sharp, and new to the school. She just kind of stormed in with this NASA routine, Mrs. Parker said, forcing a casual laugh. Very theatrical. Don't get me wrong, impressive resume. But it was more about her than the students. Ms. Carmen raised an eyebrow. You mean, more about the students seeing what's possible? Mrs. Parker hesitated. I just think we have to be careful, she said slowly. Some kids start thinking they're more special than others. Ms. Carmen didn't respond right away. But her eyes said enough. That afternoon, Ms. Carmen stood at her door, greeting her 5th graders as they trickled in from lunch. And then she saw Malik. Head down. Shoulders hunched. Backpack dragging just a little. He wasn't even in her class. But she recognized him. She knew that posture too well. She'd worn it herself once. Hey, she said gently as he passed. He looked up, surprised. Malik, right? He nodded. She smiled, warm and open, not the tight kind he was used to. I heard your mom gave a presentation yesterday. Yeah. She sounds amazing. Malik shifted his weight. She is. Do you like science too? He nodded again, quieter this time. I used to want to be an astronaut when I was your age, she said, leaning slightly closer like she was sharing a secret. I even wrote to NASA. Got a letter back. Still have it framed. Malik's eyes flickered, curious. Really? Really, she grinned. You'd be surprised how many scientists start out in schools just like this one. You know what makes the difference? What? Someone believing in them. He looked away, then back again. My teacher doesn't believe me. Ms. Carmen's face softened. Then you believe in yourself harder. Malik stared at her. And slowly, nodded. Later that evening, at the Johnson apartment, Ava was grading reports on her laptop at the kitchen table when she heard Malik's voice behind her. Hey Mom. Yeah, baby. He held out his school tablet. Can we look up something together? She turned, smiling. What are we looking for? NASA internships for high school students. Ava blinked. Then closed her laptop. I thought you might never ask. But the next day, the whispers got worse. Someone printed a meme and stuck it in Malik's locker. It was a crudely photoshopped picture of his mom in a fake space helmet, standing next to a cartoon rocket. The caption read, Next stop, Liar Land. Malik froze. His chest went tight. He ripped it off and stuffed it in his backpack before anyone else could see. But someone already had. Jalen was standing a few lockers down. Their eyes met. Jalen looked away. Said nothing. That silence said everything. During science, Ms. Parker called Malik up to the front for a demonstration about mass and gravity. He walked slowly, still thinking about the paper in his backpack. As he stood by the whiteboard, she said in that clipped voice of hers, Now Malik, since your mom's a scientist, I'm sure you can tell the class what the formula for weight is. The room went quiet. Malik stared at the board. He knew this. He'd known it since he was 7. But the words wouldn't come. His throat locked. Then someone snickered. Maybe his mom should come answer for him. The class laughed. Mrs. Parker didn't stop it. She didn't say anything at all. That night, Ava found the meme crumpled in his trash can. She didn't ask. She didn't need to. But she marched straight into the kitchen, pulled out her phone, and opened her email app. Mom, don't. I'm not letting this slide. I don't want to be the kid whose mom gets the teacher in trouble. Ava froze. She looked at her son. At how small he looked. At how tired his eyes were. And she put the phone down. Okay, she said. But promise me something. What? If it happens again, you tell me. Right away. He nodded slowly. But deep down, she knew. It already had happened again. The next few days felt like they stretched into forever. Malik kept his head down. He tried to stay out of the way, didn't volunteer to answer questions in class, didn't make eye contact during lunch, just sat in the farthest corner of the room. Every day was the same, the whispers, the stares, the awkward silences. It wasn't just the kids in his class anymore. It was everyone. At recess, the whispers had grown into something louder, more insistent. Malik couldn't escape it. Every corner of the playground seemed to carry the same conversation. NASA kid. His mom's a fraud. She's just a receptionist, not even a real scientist. And through it all, Mrs. Parker kept up her neutral smile, her overly polite nods, as though nothing had changed. As though the whole room wasn't a battleground. But then, something happened. Something small. Something Malik didn't expect. It started in Ms. Carmen's class. The bell had just rung, signaling the end of the school day. Kids were gathering their things, talking over each other, when Malik noticed her. Lila Thompson. Lila wasn't someone Malik normally paid attention to. She was quiet, the kind of girl who kept to herself and didn't get involved in the usual drama. She was smart, though. She had a reputation for keeping to the rules. She rarely spoke out, and when she did, it was to ask a question about homework or to offer a polite answer. But this time, she was different. She was standing, not with her usual group of friends, but a little to the side, near the door, looking straight at him. Malik was mid-step, heading for the door, when he heard her voice. "Actually," Lila said, loud enough for everyone to hear, "you're wrong." A few heads turned. The room fell into an uneasy quiet. Lila wasn't known for causing trouble. In fact, Malik had never even heard her raise her voice before. It wasn't directed at him, but he knew it was for him. Malik stopped in his tracks. He turned slowly to look at her. Her eyes met his for a second, then she turned back to her friends, who had been laughing at some joke Malik didn't catch. She wasn't smiling. "You guys are so out of line," she continued, her voice strong now. "You have no idea what you're talking about." The silence grew heavier. It was like the entire class was waiting for someone to speak. Or maybe for someone to stop her. But Lila didn't stop. "You think just because someone's different, they're making stuff up? Do you know how hard it is to even get to NASA?" Her voice wavered slightly, but she didn't back down. "My cousin tried for years to get in. He's been to school for science, gotten internships. But he never made it. And you know what? It's not a joke. It's not just some mom showing off. Malik's mom is legit, and if you think for 1 second she's pretending to be a scientist, then maybe you should try talking to her before running your mouths." There was a pause. A long one. Malik felt a flutter in his chest, a mix of surprise and confusion. He hadn't expected this. He'd always thought of Lila as a bystander, the quiet observer who never got involved in anything that didn't concern her. But here she was, standing up for him. No one moved. No one said anything. Mrs. Parker had already left the room, so it was just the students, left to deal with the unexpected clash. And then someone else spoke. I didn't mean it like that," said Olivia, one of the popular girls, her voice more uncertain now. "I didn't know." "Well, maybe you should think twice next time before making assumptions," Lila shot back, her voice firm. She looked around at the others in the room. "Because Malik didn't ask for any of this. And if you all can't see that, then you're the ones who should be embarrassed." Malik could feel the heat in his face, a sudden rush of warmth and something else, a sense of hope. He wasn't sure where it came from. But before he could process it, Lila had already turned back to her locker, as though nothing had happened. As if she hadn't just set the record straight for him. The rest of the afternoon passed in a blur. Malik's mind raced with 1,000 thoughts. Why had Lila done that? Why had she stood up for him when no one else would? Why hadn't anyone else said something? Why hadn't Mrs. Parker said something? By the time he got home, Ava could see the look in his eyes before he even spoke. "What happened today?" Malik shook his head, sitting down on the couch. He wanted to tell her everything, about the whispers, the joke, and how it felt like he was invisible all over again. But there was something else. Something new. "Lila stood up for me today," he said quietly. Ava blinked, surprised. "Lila Thompson?" "Yeah." Malik paused, unsure how to explain. "She told everyone to stop making fun of me and my mom. She told them they were wrong." Ava smiled. A soft, proud smile that made Malik feel both light and heavy at the same time. "She sounds like a good friend." "I don't think she's my friend. I mean, we don't even talk." "Maybe she will now," Ava said gently. "Sometimes it takes someone on the outside to see things we miss." Malik thought about that for a moment. Maybe Lila wasn't his friend. But what she had done today. That was more than just kindness. That was something real. Something rare. The next day at school, the whispers weren't gone, but they were quieter. People were still talking, but Malik didn't feel like they were talking about him as much. Lila's words had made a difference, even if it was small. She had given him a glimpse of something, something that hadn't seemed possible in the days before, solidarity. And for the first time in a long while, Malik felt like maybe, just maybe, he wasn't alone. The days after Lila stood up for Malik felt different. The tension in the air hadn't gone away, but it had shifted. It wasn't the kind of silence where people whispered behind your back, it was the kind of silence where everyone pretended nothing had changed, even though they all knew it had. Lila was quieter than usual, not like the girl who had spoken out with such fierce confidence. Malik couldn't help but notice that she'd started sitting alone at lunch, keeping her head down, just like him. It was as though her act of defiance had drawn a line in the sand, and now, she had to stand on one side of it, with him. But that came at a cost. By Wednesday, the rumors had started again. Only this time, it wasn't about Malik's mom anymore. It was about Lila. The kids had begun to call her a teacher's pet, and worse, a snitch. Malik heard it first during gym class when Jalen whispered to his friend, "She's only sticking up for him because she thinks it'll get her some points with the teachers. Like she's trying to get in their good graces or something." Malik wasn't sure how to feel about it. Part of him wanted to defend Lila, to tell them they were wrong, but that would mean admitting he cared, admitting that he noticed the way they looked at him differently now. And Malik didn't want that. He didn't want to stand out anymore. He just wanted the whispers to stop. But he also didn't want to let Lila down. She had stuck up for him when no one else would. Lila had begun skipping lunch altogether. She would grab a snack and disappear to the library, away from the gaze of the other kids. Malik noticed. He saw the way her face looked, tired, like she was carrying a weight no one else saw. And one afternoon, he caught her standing by the lockers, clutching her books to her chest. Her eyes were red, like she hadn't been sleeping well. "Lila?" Malik called out, his voice soft but unsure. She turned to look at him. Her face instantly went blank. "Hey. What's going on?" he asked, stepping closer. "Nothing," she said quickly, wiping her eyes with the back of her hand. "I'm fine." Malik didn't believe her. He never did. Not with the way her hands trembled as she held her books. "Lila, you don't have to keep pretending," he said, taking a small step forward. "I know it's not easy. I heard what they've been saying about you." She sighed deeply, leaning back against the lockers. "It's fine. I'm fine. She shook her head. "I didn't expect things to get like this. I was just trying to help." Malik paused. His heart clenched in his chest. He didn't want her to feel like this, didn't want her to feel the way he had been feeling for the last few weeks. But things were different now. The kids at school, they didn't let things slide. They didn't forget. Maybe you didn't expect it. But that's what happens when you do the right thing. He looked down at the floor. You end up being the target. But I appreciate it. Really. Lila smiled a little, her eyes still sad. It doesn't feel like anyone appreciates it. The next day, Mrs. Parker called Malik up to the front of the class again. The stares were back. This time, the room felt colder, sharper. Malik could feel the weight of everyone's eyes on him as he walked to the front. He didn't want to be there. He didn't want to answer the question. He didn't even want to look at Mrs. Parker, who stood there, her gaze steady and unbothered. "Malik," she began, "since you're so knowledgeable about the solar system, why don't you tell the class about the latest Mars rover mission?" His heart hammered in his chest. His throat felt dry. He could do this. He knew this. But something stopped him. Something in the way the class was looking at him. Something that made him feel like a specimen under a microscope. Malik started, but his voice cracked. He felt like he was suffocating in the room. "Go ahead, Malik. We're waiting." A snicker came from somewhere in the back. "Come on, NASA kid," someone muttered. The room tensed. Malik looked over at Lila. She was sitting there, her arms crossed, watching him closely. She didn't look away. It was like she was giving him a silent signal. Like she was saying, "You're not alone." Malik swallowed hard. His palms were sweaty, his heart racing, but somehow he felt steadier. He wasn't alone. Not anymore. He cleared his throat. I know that the Perseverance rover is the newest one on Mars. It's been collecting samples of soil to find signs of ancient life. It's pretty cool because it's also searching for water, which is key for understanding how life could have existed there. His words began to flow, slowly at first, but then faster as he spoke. He talked about the mission, about the rover's journey, about the potential for future missions. He didn't look at the class anymore. He just focused on the facts. He focused on what he knew. When he finished, there was silence. For a moment, the class didn't say anything. Then, Mrs. Parker clapped, just a small, polite clap. "Very good, Malik. You've certainly been paying attention in class." Malik didn't feel like celebrating. But for the first time in a long time, he didn't feel completely out of place either. Later that day, when the final bell rang, Lila waited by the door, as usual. Malik wasn't sure if he should talk to her or not. She didn't look at him as he walked past her. But then, just as he was about to head out the door, Lila stopped him. "Malik, wait." He turned to face her. "Yeah. I just wanted to say," she said quietly, "you did great today." Malik's chest tightened. He couldn't believe it. "You really think so?" Lila nodded. "You stood up for yourself. That's more than most people can do." For the first time in days, Malik felt something like relief wash over him. Maybe he wasn't the only one fighting the battle. Maybe he didn't have to carry this alone. And maybe, just maybe, Lila was going to be his ally after all. Malik didn't realize just how much one person's words could change everything. The days after his conversation with Lila felt like a slow turning of a page, one he hadn't been sure he was ready to face. The whispers had settled for a while, but they never truly disappeared. At lunch the next day, he was standing in line for his tray when Jalen, the loudmouth of their grade, caught his eye. "So, NASA kid," Jalen called, a smirk creeping onto his face. "You still think you're going to be an astronaut one day?" Malik's stomach twisted. He didn't want to respond. He didn't want to give Jalen the satisfaction of knowing his words had any effect. He had learned that much from his mom: never let anyone see how much their words hurt you. But just as Malik turned his head, ready to ignore him, Lila appeared at his side. She didn't say anything to Jalen. She didn't need to. She just stepped in front of Malik and stood there, tall and unwavering. "Why don't you try saying that to his face?" Lila said coolly, her voice sharp. Jalen's smirk faltered for just a second, but then he laughed, a hollow sound that didn't reach his eyes. "Oh, come on, Lila. It's just a joke. Relax." Lila didn't move. "It's not a joke when you're being cruel." There was a heavy silence. The entire lunchroom seemed to pause, as if waiting for someone to do something. Jalen shifted uncomfortably, looking at Malik as if he didn't know how to react. And then something strange happened. Instead of backing down, Jalen stepped back. He muttered something under his breath, something that wasn't clear, but his eyes avoided Lila's. He turned and walked off without another word. For a moment, Malik stood there in shock. He had never expected Lila to do that. He hadn't even expected her to stand by him in the first place. But now, she had just done something even bigger. She had taken a stand for what was right, even when it wasn't popular. After that day, Malik noticed a change. Lila didn't just stand up for him in small ways. She started standing up for other kids too. The kids who were often ignored or picked on. The kids who didn't have the loudest voices or the most friends. It was like she had found a strength within herself that Malik had never seen before. But with this newfound strength came a price. At recess the next day, Malik caught sight of Lila sitting alone on the swings, her books piled next to her on the ground. He walked over, unsure of what to say. The day before had been a victory, but today, Lila seemed distant, her gaze lost somewhere far away. "You okay?" Malik asked quietly, standing next to the swing. Lila didn't immediately respond. She just looked at him, her eyes tired. "I don't know," she said after a long pause. "It's like, every time I try to do the right thing, someone finds a way to tear it down. I don't even know why I bother anymore." Malik sat down on the grass next to her, unsure of what to say. He had seen it too, the way the other kids looked at her now. The way they avoided her, or whispered behind her back. "Lila," he said slowly, "you didn't do anything wrong. You stood up for me. For what's right. And that's more than most people ever do." Lila looked down at her hands, tracing the edges of the book she had been holding. "Yeah, but sometimes it feels like I'm the only one who cares. I'm the only one who sees what's happening. And it's hard to keep fighting when it feels like no one else is on your side." Malik felt a pang of empathy for her. He knew exactly how she felt. There had been days when he felt the same way, like no one understood the weight of what he was carrying. But Lila had never wavered, not even when things got difficult. She had stood by him when no one else would. "You're not alone," Malik said quietly. "I'm here, remember?" Lila turned her head, meeting his eyes. For the first time in days, she gave him a small, genuine smile. "Thanks, Malik." As the week went on, Malik realized something important. The way people treated Lila, like she was an outcast, just like him, was the result of something deeper than just high school drama. It was a reflection of something much bigger: society's need to label people, to put them into boxes. The kids who were different didn't fit into the neat, simple categories that everyone else did. And for some reason, people felt the need to tear them down for it. But Malik was beginning to understand that it didn't matter. What mattered was that Lila had chosen to fight for what was right. And that made her stronger than anyone else in that school. It wasn't just about standing up for others. It was about standing up for yourself. About not letting the world dictate who you were or what you could do. And as Malik watched Lila rise above the hurtful words, he realized he needed to do the same. The final bell rang, signaling the end of another long day. Malik walked slowly to the bus stop, his thoughts still swirling in his head. He had started the week feeling like an outsider, someone who didn't belong. But now, as he stood next to Lila, who had once again shown him what it meant to stand up for yourself, he didn't feel so alone anymore. "You ready?" Lila asked, snapping him out of his thoughts. "Yeah," Malik said, glancing over at her with a new sense of respect. "Let's go." And for the first time in a long time, Malik didn't feel like he was fighting the world by himself. He had someone by his side now, someone who understood what it meant to fight for what's right. And maybe, just maybe, that made all the difference. It was a cold, gray Tuesday morning when things took a turn. The air in the school felt heavy, thick with something unspoken. It wasn't just the weather, something had changed between Malik and his classmates. The way they looked at him, the way they whispered when he passed by. He had hoped it would get better, that it would just be a phase. But it wasn't. It was a shift, one he couldn't ignore. It all started during homeroom, when Mr. Green walked in with a new student. The whole class turned their attention to the door, and Malik, who had been trying to focus on the history notes in front of him, looked up instinctively. "Class, we have a new student joining us today," Mr. Green announced, his voice cheerful, the kind of tone teachers used to mask the awkwardness of first days. "This is Maya Brooks. Let's all give her a warm welcome." Maya Brooks. Malik's eyes lingered on her for a moment longer than he intended. She was tall, with dark skin that glowed under the fluorescent lights. She had a quiet confidence about her, something that Malik could immediately sense. Her posture, the way she carried herself, it was like she knew exactly who she was, and she didn't care what anyone thought. Maya's gaze swept across the room, landing briefly on Malik, before she took a seat at the desk beside him. Malik shifted uncomfortably in his chair, but he didn't say anything. The last thing he wanted was more attention. And yet, it felt like everything in the room had shifted just by her arrival. As the bell rang, signaling the start of the lesson, Malik tried to push his thoughts aside. But he couldn't help but notice how the class began to change as Maya settled in. For the rest of the morning, she was quiet, almost invisible, but Malik could feel the stir in the air. Every time he glanced at her, she was looking back at him, calmly, unbothered. Malik didn't know what it was, but something about Maya intrigued him. Later that day, during lunch, Malik found himself once again standing in line, this time next to Lila. They hadn't had much time to talk recently, not with the way the school had turned into a minefield of whispers and side eyes. But today, things were different. "You see the new girl?" Lila asked, her voice low. "Maya Brooks?" Malik nodded, still distracted. "Yeah. She seems different. Like she doesn't care about anything." Lila raised an eyebrow. "Exactly. And that's what makes her stand out. I don't know. It's like she's from another world." Malik glanced over at Maya, who was sitting alone at the far end of the lunchroom, eating her food without any fuss, like she didn't care about anyone's opinion. "Maybe she's got it all figured out," Lila mused. "You know, the whole not caring what people think. It's something I wish I could do." Malik looked back at Lila. "What, not care?" "Yeah." She shrugged. "I mean, I still feel like I have to explain myself all the time. You know, after everything that happened, it's like people are just waiting for me to mess up." "Same here," Malik admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. "I thought things would calm down after I told them about my mom. But it's only gotten worse. People are still laughing behind my back. Still calling me NASA kid." Lila frowned. "That's not fair." "Nope," Malik agreed, clenching his jaw. "But what can we do about it? People are gonna think what they want, no matter what we do." Lila looked down at her tray, poking at her food. "I guess." The next day, everything changed. During history class, just as Mr. Green started his lecture, Maya Brooks stood up. The entire room went silent, as if everyone instinctively knew something was about to happen. "Mr. Green," Maya said, her voice clear, but not loud, "I have something to say." Mr. Green looked up, surprised. "Maya? I don't want to be the new girl who's just another face in the crowd," she continued. "I've been watching this class, and I've seen how some of you treat Malik." She paused, her eyes scanning the room, landing on a few familiar faces. "You laugh at him because of his mom, because he's different. But why? What does that say about you?" Malik's heart skipped a beat. He wasn't sure what to feel. Part of him wanted to crawl under the desk and disappear, but another part felt seen. Like Maya was standing up for him, even when he hadn't asked for it. But what really caught Malik off guard was the way the rest of the class reacted. No one spoke. No one moved. It was like they were all waiting for someone to say something, anything, to break the silence. Jalen was the first to speak, as if on cue. "Who do you think you are, Maya?" he sneered. "You're just the new girl. What do you know about us?" Maya didn't flinch. She stared him down with a calm that Malik envied. "I know enough. I know you like to put people down to feel better about yourselves." The tension in the room was palpable. Everyone was watching, waiting for the next move. Malik could feel his palms start to sweat. He didn't want to get involved. He didn't want to be the center of attention again. But Maya's words rang in his ears, louder than any of the whispers that had followed him for weeks. "You shouldn't be afraid to stand up for what's right," Maya said, addressing the entire class. No one should have to be afraid to be themselves. For a long moment, no one said anything. Then, to Malik's surprise, some of the kids who had been laughing at him just days ago looked away, their faces suddenly avoiding Maya's gaze. A few whispered to each other, but they kept their voices low. It wasn't much, but it was something. By the end of the day, Malik felt a strange shift inside him. He had been holding on to so many things, fear, anger, shame, but for the first time, he felt like maybe, just maybe, things could be different. Maya had shown him something that he didn't think was possible, that standing up wasn't always about being the loudest voice in the room. Sometimes, it was about being the calmest, the most steadfast, the one who didn't back down. When Malik found Lila at the bus stop, he couldn't wait to tell her what happened. "Lila," he said, his voice full of excitement, "Maya, she actually said something in class today. She stood up for me. For all of us. She called out everyone who's been messing with me." Lila blinked in surprise. "She did?" "Yeah. And the best part? She didn't even care what anyone thought. She just spoke the truth." Lila looked thoughtful for a moment. "Maybe we can all do that. Maybe we don't need to wait for permission." Malik nodded, his heart a little lighter. Maybe this was the change he had been waiting for. The week after Maya's bold stand in history class was quieter than Malik had anticipated. But the calmness was deceptive. There was a palpable sense of tension that hung in the air, like a storm about to break. It wasn't just the whispered comments or the side glances that Malik had gotten used to. It was something deeper, something more subtle. The way people treated each other seemed to shift. A strange kind of unease began to spread through the school. But even in the midst of all that, Malik started to feel a change within himself. For the first time in a long while, he didn't feel as powerless. Maya's words echoed in his mind every time he felt the weight of people's expectations pressing down on him. You shouldn't be afraid to stand up for what's right. He couldn't ignore them anymore. It was Monday morning when everything finally came to a head. Malik was sitting in homeroom, flipping through his notebook, when Mr. Green announced something that instantly caught his attention. "All right, class," Mr. Green said, standing at the front of the room with a serious expression. "Next week, we'll be doing a class presentation on famous historical figures. You'll need to research a person who has made a significant impact, and present your findings to the class. It could be anyone, from any period of history." Malik's heart skipped a beat. He wasn't much of a public speaker. In fact, the thought of standing in front of his class, all eyes on him, terrified him. And yet, something inside him stirred at the thought of the project. It wasn't just any presentation. It was a chance to talk about someone important, someone who had made a difference. Over the next few days, Malik found himself immersed in the project. As he sat in the library, researching the lives of famous African American figures like George Washington Carver, Thurgood Marshall, and Mae Jemison, he felt a growing sense of pride. Mae Jemison, an astronaut who had worked for NASA, stood out to him the most. She was smart, determined, and didn't let anything hold her back. She had followed her dreams despite all the odds stacked against her. He could relate to that. And then, an idea formed in his mind. By Friday, Malik had made a decision. He was going to give his presentation on Mae Jemison. Not just because she was an astronaut, not just because she worked for NASA, but because she represented everything he wanted to be, someone who had the strength to break barriers and challenge expectations. Someone who stood up for herself, even when the world tried to bring her down. As he shared his plan with Lila, she smiled, clearly impressed. "That's awesome, Malik. You're going to do great." But despite her confidence, Malik wasn't so sure. The thought of standing in front of the class, talking about Mae Jemison and his own mom working at NASA, still filled him with dread. He didn't know if he was ready to face the mockery again. What if they laughed at him? What if the whole class mocked him just like they always did? "You know," Lila said, noticing his hesitation, "it's not about them. It's about you and what you want to say." You're not standing there for them. You're standing there for you, for your mom, for Mae Jemison. You've got a story to tell. Don't let anyone take that from you. Malik looked at Lila, her words sinking in deeper than he expected. It wasn't about them. It was about him and what he believed in. He wasn't standing there to prove something to the people who didn't understand him. He was standing there to honor those who had come before him. He was standing there for his mom, for his dreams, and for people like Mae Jemison, who had dared to follow their passions without apology. The day of the presentation arrived, and Malik felt the nerves in his stomach twist tighter than ever before. He was the last one to go, and the pressure of waiting was making him feel like he might pass out. His heart was racing, his palms were sweaty, and every part of him wanted to just walk out the door and forget about the whole thing. But then he remembered Maya. He remembered how she had stood up in history class. She hadn't cared about the judgment of others. She hadn't let their whispers get to her. Maybe he could do the same. When his name was called, Malik stood up, his legs shaking beneath him. His hands felt clammy, and his throat was dry. But he walked to the front of the class, set his notes on the desk, and cleared his throat. "I'm Malik," he began, his voice a little shaky, "and today, I'm going to tell you about Mae Jemison." As he spoke, the fear started to fade. His words came more easily. He told them about Mae Jemison's childhood, her dream of becoming a doctor, and how she had made history as the first African-American woman in space. He told them how her journey to NASA wasn't easy, how she had faced countless obstacles, including discrimination, but how she had refused to let those obstacles stop her. She had broken barriers, just like the people in his life had. Malik didn't stop there. As he spoke, he felt a new kind of power rise within him. He told the class about his mom, how she worked at NASA, and how she had always taught him the importance of believing in himself. He shared his own story, his dreams, and his desire to follow in the footsteps of people like Mae Jemison and his mom. He wasn't just talking about space. He was talking about the dreams that lived inside all of them. "I don't have to be an astronaut," Malik finished, his voice stronger now. "But I do want to make a difference. I want to show people that you don't have to fit into their box. You can be who you are and still do amazing things." The room was silent for a moment after he finished. The usual whispers and snickers were gone. For the first time, Malik felt like his words had weight. They had meaning. Jalen, who had been one of his biggest tormentors, was sitting in the back of the room. Malik's eyes met his, and for a brief moment, Jalen didn't look away. There was something in his eyes, something that Malik couldn't quite place. But it wasn't mockery. It was something else. Respect? Malik couldn't tell. But whatever it was, it made him feel like he had won something far more important than just a class presentation. When the bell rang, signaling the end of the day, Malik felt a strange sense of calm wash over him. He had done it. He had stood up, not just for his mom or for Mae Jemison, but for himself. As he walked out the door with Lila, he couldn't help but smile. "Thanks for the pep talk," he said, nudging her gently. Lila smiled back, her eyes sparkling. "You didn't need me to tell you. You've had that strength inside of you all along." Malik thought about those words as they walked toward the bus. Maybe he did. And maybe, just maybe, that strength was all he needed to face whatever came next. The week after Malik's presentation, things didn't return to normal. In fact, they never would again. The reactions from his classmates had been mixed, some of them had clapped, others had just stared. The whispers had died down, but the undercurrent of judgment still lingered. Malik couldn't shake the feeling that there was something just below the surface, something that was waiting to resurface when he least expected it. It wasn't the mockery he feared anymore. It was the silence. The silence that said, "You don't belong here." The silence that told him, "This isn't your world. You're different." And that silence came from people who weren't just classmates, but also from the community that had always been part of his life, his neighborhood, his friends, even some of his family. Malik had always been proud of his mom's job at NASA. But lately, he began to feel like his connection to her, to that world, was a little too far removed from the world he lived in. He had always been the kid who was different. Always the kid who got straight A's and carried around a weight that no one else understood. Now that weight felt even heavier. People in his community didn't talk about space. They didn't think about things like NASA or the moon. They didn't dream about becoming astronauts or doctors or scientists. They talked about things that were closer to home, like survival, like getting by, like making it through the week. But Malik wasn't sure he fit in there anymore. It was a Tuesday afternoon when Malik's mom called him into the kitchen. Her voice sounded unusually quiet, more serious than usual. "Malik, can you come here for a minute?" she asked. He got up from his spot on the couch, his mind immediately racing. What happened? When he walked into the kitchen, he saw his mom standing by the counter, holding a letter in her hand. She had this look on her face, like she was about to say something important. Malik's heart started to beat faster. He didn't know why, but a sense of dread began to creep up on him. "Everything okay?" Malik asked, his voice barely above a whisper. His mom smiled at him, but it didn't quite reach her eyes. "I've been thinking a lot about what you said the other day, about Mae Jemison, about your dreams. I'm proud of you, Malik. I really am." Malik's stomach twisted. "What's the letter?" he asked. His mom sat down at the kitchen table and motioned for him to sit with her. She took a deep breath, like she was preparing for something. "Malik, I got a letter today. From NASA." Malik's breath caught in his throat. What does it say?" His mom hesitated before speaking. "They've offered me a promotion. A big one. It's a great opportunity. But it would mean moving, probably to another state." Malik blinked, trying to process the information. His mom had always worked hard to get where she was, but he never expected this. "You're thinking about taking it?" Malik asked, his voice tight. His mom nodded. "I don't know yet. It's a big decision. But it could change everything for us, Malik. It's a chance to do more, to be more." The weight of her words settled heavily in the room. Malik's mind raced. On one hand, this could be amazing for his mom's career. It could open up new doors for their family. But on the other hand, it meant leaving everything they had known. Leaving the neighborhood, leaving his school, and leaving behind the one thing that made Malik feel connected to his mom's world, her job at NASA. "What about me?" Malik asked, the words slipping out before he could stop them. "What about my life here?" His mom reached over and took his hand. "I know this isn't easy for you, Malik. But I've always wanted the best for you. And this could be a chance to start fresh. To go somewhere where you could really make a difference." Malik didn't know what to say. He had always admired his mom's strength, her determination to climb the ladder at NASA. But now, it felt like that same ambition was pulling them further apart. "I don't want to leave," Malik admitted softly, his voice breaking. His mom's expression softened. "I understand. But sometimes, the hardest choices are the ones that lead to the best outcomes." The next few days were a blur. Malik went through the motions at school, but his mind was elsewhere. He couldn't stop thinking about the conversation with his mom. He had never questioned her decisions before, but now he was torn. He wanted to support her, but he couldn't help but feel like she was leaving him behind. His friends noticed something was off. Lila, especially, kept asking him if he was okay. Malik didn't have the words to explain what he was feeling. He didn't know how to tell her that the future he had imagined for himself, one that involved NASA and space, now felt like it was slipping through his fingers. It was Friday afternoon when Maya Brooks found Malik sitting by himself on the steps outside the school. She sat down next to him without saying a word, just letting the silence stretch between them. Eventually, she spoke. You've been quiet all week. Something's bothering you. Malik stared at the ground for a moment before looking up at Maya. He wasn't sure why, but he felt like she was someone he could talk to. Maybe it was because she was different from everyone else. Maybe it was because she had this unspoken understanding about him. My mom got an offer from NASA, Malik said, his voice low. A big promotion. But it means we might have to leave. I don't know what to do. I don't want to leave, but at the same time, I don't want to hold her back. Maya nodded, her expression thoughtful. I get it. It's not easy when things change. But sometimes, the hardest decisions are the ones that bring the biggest rewards. You're not holding her back, Malik. She's doing what's best for you, even if it feels like she's moving away from you. Malik looked at Maya, her words sinking in. It wasn't just about him. It was about his mom, too. She was trying to build a future for both of them, even if it meant sacrificing what they had now. Maybe I'm just scared, Malik admitted. Scared of what happens next. Maya's smile was small, but it was sincere. It's okay to be scared. That's part of growing. But you don't have to do it alone. You've got people who care about you. And you've got a future ahead of you, whether you stay or go. Just remember that you have control over what happens next. That night, Malik couldn't sleep. The conversation with Maya kept running through his mind. He didn't know what the future would look like, but he was beginning to realize that maybe he didn't need to have everything figured out right now. Maybe the next step was about trusting in himself, trusting in his mom, and believing that whatever happened, they would figure it out together. When he finally fell asleep, it was with a sense of peace he hadn't felt in days. Tomorrow, he would talk to his mom again. He didn't have all the answers, but he was ready to face the unknown, whatever it might bring. Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. This story might just spark a new beginning. What's one thing that always pushes you forward, even when things get tough? The days after Malik's conversation with Maya felt like a blur. He spent most of his time at school lost in his thoughts, but the weight of the decision his mother faced continued to gnaw at him. Every time he walked past the bulletin board at school, where photos of astronauts, scientists, and engineers were displayed, he felt his chest tighten. He had always dreamed of being part of that world, the world that his mom worked so hard to be a part of. But now, everything felt uncertain. Could he really follow in her footsteps? Could he find a way to balance his dreams with the realities of his family's life? It was a Saturday afternoon when Malik finally sat down to talk to his mom again. She had been quiet over the past week, clearly still processing the offer from NASA. It was hard to imagine what this kind of decision might feel like for her. She had worked so hard to get where she was, and now she had to choose between advancing her career and staying with Malik, the one person who had always been her anchor. As Malik sat at the kitchen table, waiting for his mom to join him, he felt the familiar nerves in his stomach. He wasn't sure how to start the conversation. What if she decided to leave? What if this was the end of everything they knew? Finally, his mom walked into the kitchen, holding a cup of coffee in her hand. She gave him a small smile as she sat down across from him. There was an air of exhaustion about her, but also a quiet strength. Malik, she began, her voice steady but full of emotion. I know you've been thinking about this a lot. I want you to know that I've been thinking about it too. A lot. This is a big decision, and I don't want to make it without knowing how you feel. Malik nodded, his heart racing. I don't know, Mom. I don't want you to go. But I also don't want to hold you back from something amazing. His mom looked at him with a tenderness that almost made him break down. I know you don't. But this isn't just about me, Malik. It's about what's best for both of us. You've always supported me in everything I've done, and I need to know that you're okay with this. I don't want to make a decision that changes everything for us, but I also don't want to let an opportunity like this slip away. Malik looked at his mom, her tired eyes filled with hope and worry. He saw the woman who had always put him first, the woman who had fought for everything she had. And he realized something important in that moment. His mom had always made sacrifices for him. She had put her career on the line to raise him, to give him a better life. She had worked at NASA, not just for herself, but for both of them. She wanted the best for him, just as he wanted the best for her. Malik took a deep breath. I know you've always done what's best for us, Mom. And I trust you. If this is what you think is the right thing to do, then I'm okay with it. But I don't want to be left behind. His mom reached over and took his hand. You won't be left behind, Malik. No matter where we go, we'll figure it out together. I promise. The days that followed were filled with a mix of uncertainty and hope. Malik's mom spent hours on the phone, talking to people from NASA and making sure everything was in place. She researched schools in the area they might move to and started making plans. But no matter how hard she tried, Malik could sense her own conflicted feelings. This wasn't just a career move for her, it was a change for their whole family. The idea of moving to a new place, leaving behind everything they had known, was daunting. But Malik also saw the fire in his mom's eyes, the same fire that had pushed her to overcome so many obstacles. She wasn't backing down. She was going to do this for them. A week later, Malik stood in front of the class again, this time not as the kid who had to explain why his mom worked at NASA, but as someone who had finally found his voice. It was a Wednesday afternoon, and the class was about to have a discussion about the future, about what they wanted to do with their lives, what they hoped to become. Mr. Green had asked everyone to think about their dreams and share them. Malik didn't know what exactly made him speak up that day, but as he sat there listening to his classmates talk about their aspirations, becoming doctors, lawyers, artists, musicians, he felt a surge of determination rising within him. He had been afraid to speak up in the past, to share his dreams with people who didn't understand him. But now, in the face of uncertainty, he knew that he couldn't hold back anymore. When it was his turn, Malik stood up, his heart pounding in his chest. He looked around the room, meeting the eyes of his classmates, including Jalen, who had once mocked him. But this time, Malik didn't feel afraid. He was done hiding. My name is Malik, and I'm going to be an engineer, Malik began, his voice steady and strong. I want to work at NASA, just like my mom. I know it's not going to be easy, but I've seen what it takes. I've seen the sacrifices. And I'm willing to make them too. The room was quiet for a moment, but then something unexpected happened. Jalen, the kid who had always teased him, nodded. It wasn't a mocking nod. It was a respectful one. That's cool, Malik, Jalen said, surprising everyone, including himself. Malik smiled, a sense of peace settling over him. He didn't need anyone's approval. He had already made the decision. His path was his own to walk, and he was ready to take the first step. Later that evening, as Malik sat on the front steps of his house, he looked up at the stars. For the first time in a long time, he didn't feel so alone. There were no guarantees in life, no promises that everything would turn out the way he hoped. But looking at the vastness of the night sky, he realized something important. The world was full of possibilities. And no matter where life took him, he would never stop reaching for the stars. The days leading up to the move were a whirlwind of activity. Malik's mom had made the decision, she would accept the promotion from NASA, and the family would relocate to another state. The news had come with mixed emotions. Malik had always been proud of his mom's achievements, but now that the reality of moving was setting in, the excitement was tempered by sadness and uncertainty. It wasn't just the idea of leaving behind their home, it was the thought of leaving behind everything he knew, his friends, his school, the neighborhood he had grown up in. Malik wasn't sure what life would look like in this new place, but one thing was clear, things were changing, and there was no turning back. Lila was the first person Malik confided in after hearing the news that the move was official. They had been best friends for years, and it wasn't just their shared experiences at school that had brought them together. They understood each other in ways that no one else could. So, when Malik told her about the move, he wasn't sure how she would react. "I don't want to leave," Malik admitted, his voice tinged with uncertainty as they sat together under the big oak tree behind their school. The sun was setting, casting long shadows over the grass, but Malik's thoughts felt clouded, heavy. "It feels like I'm giving up everything I've worked for. All the things that made sense to me. I don't know what's going to happen next." Lila, ever the realist, remained quiet for a moment before responding. "I get it. I know you've always wanted to go to NASA and all that, but it's huge, Malik. It's a big chance for your mom. And you. It's scary, I know. But it's not the end of your dreams." Malik let out a sigh. "It doesn't feel like the beginning of them either. Everything's just so different now. I've always been in control of what happens to me here, but now. I don't know. It's like I'm losing my place in everything." Lila placed a hand on his shoulder, offering him a rare moment of comfort. "Look, Malik, life's not always going to be in your control. But sometimes, the changes you're scared of can lead you to the most incredible things. Who knows what kind of opportunities you'll have in this new place? Maybe the future you've always dreamed of is waiting there for you, even if it looks a little different than you imagined." As the days passed, Malik began to notice the small ways in which his friends were adjusting to the news. Some of them were excited for him, but many were distant, unsure of what to say. He could see the whispers behind his back, hear the comments when he wasn't in the room. It was like they didn't know how to handle the fact that someone from their world was about to leave it all behind. The hardest part was saying goodbye to the people he'd known for years. As the last day of school before the move approached, Malik found himself standing in the hallway, facing a group of his classmates. They were gathered by the lockers, chatting about summer plans, but there was an unspoken tension in the air. "Hey, Malik," Jalen said, his voice a little quieter than usual. "I heard you're leaving. That's kinda crazy, man." Malik nodded, unsure of how to respond. Jalen had never been his friend, but the past few weeks had shown him a different side of the boy. A part of him almost wanted to ask if they could start over, if they could be friends in a way they hadn't been before. But he held back. Maybe it was because he wasn't sure if he wanted to go down that road. "I'm leaving, yeah," Malik said, his voice steady. "But I'm not giving up on everything. I'll still chase my dreams. And who knows? Maybe I'll see you around someday." Jalen raised an eyebrow, clearly surprised by Malik's words. "I didn't know you had that in you," he said, nodding slightly. "Good luck with that, man. Seriously." Malik smiled, the brief exchange making him feel a little better. Maybe he didn't need everyone's approval. He just needed to stay true to himself. The day of the move came all too quickly. The house was nearly empty, save for a few boxes and the familiar smell of home that lingered in the air. Malik stood in the living room, his gaze falling on the place where he had spent so many memories, his first day of school, birthday parties, quiet nights spent doing homework. It was hard to imagine this space as anything but the place where he had grown up. "Malik, it's time to go," his mom called from the front door. He turned, giving the house one last look before walking out to the car. His mom was standing by the door, holding a large box with a few of their things inside. She smiled at him, a look of determination on her face. "This is it," Malik said quietly, his voice laced with a mixture of sadness and excitement. His mom nodded, setting the box down in the car and walking over to him. "I know it's hard, but this is just the beginning. We're going to make this work. You'll see." As they drove away from the house, Malik couldn't help but feel the weight of the moment. It wasn't just a physical move, it was a shift in everything he had known. But somewhere deep inside, he felt a flicker of hope. His dreams were still alive. And no matter where he went, they were his to chase. The drive was long, but Malik's thoughts were filled with the future. The future of new beginnings, new challenges, and new opportunities. He wasn't sure what awaited him in this new place, but one thing was certain, he was ready for it. Ready to embrace whatever came next with open arms. When they finally arrived at their new home, Malik took a deep breath, stepping out of the car and into a new chapter of his life. The house was different, smaller, quieter, but it was still home. As he looked around, Malik felt a strange sense of calm. "This is it, Mom," he said, smiling slightly. "This is the start of something new." His mom smiled back, her hand resting on his shoulder. "I'm proud of you, Malik. And this is only the beginning. Together, we can do anything." That night, as Malik sat alone in his new room, unpacking the last of his things, he looked out the window. The stars were bright above him, just as they had been in his old home. In that moment, he knew that no matter where he was, the stars would always be there, guiding him forward. The new town felt unfamiliar, almost like a foreign land to Malik. The streets were quieter than the bustling ones back home, and the houses were spread farther apart, each surrounded by tall trees and wide lawns. It was peaceful, but there was an unsettling stillness to it that made Malik feel isolated. His mom had thrown herself into setting up their new home. She had unpacked with determination, as if keeping busy could somehow erase the pang of loss she too was feeling. Malik admired her for it, but he also knew she had to be scared. Moving to a new place, especially one that felt so far from everything they knew, wasn't easy for either of them. But as much as she tried to keep everything together, Malik could see the uncertainty in her eyes. The first few days were rough. Malik had spent hours unpacking boxes in his new room, trying to make it feel like home. But despite his best efforts, the place felt empty. He hadn't made any new friends yet, and the thought of starting over from scratch was daunting. Every time he walked outside, it felt like the world was too quiet, too different from the noise and familiarity of his old neighborhood. On his third day in town, Malik reluctantly walked to his new school. He had been dreading this day, not because he was afraid of school itself, but because he was terrified of how different everything would feel. Would the kids be like his old friends? Would they understand him? Or would he be an outsider again, just like when he first moved to his old school years ago? As he walked up to the school gates, he noticed a group of students hanging out by the entrance, chatting and laughing. Malik hesitated for a moment, then took a deep breath and walked toward them. When he stepped closer, a girl with short, curly hair noticed him and gave him a warm smile. "Hey, you must be the new kid, right?" she said, her voice friendly and welcoming. Malik nodded, relieved to find someone who didn't seem too intimidating. "Yeah, I just moved here," Malik replied, his voice tentative. "Name's Malik." "I'm Zoe," the girl said, extending her hand. "Welcome to the neighborhood. We were just about to head in. You want to walk with us?" Malik hesitated, unsure. But something about Zoe's easy smile made him feel like maybe, just maybe, things could be different here. He accepted her offer, and together, they walked to class. As they walked, Zoe chatted easily about the school, the teachers, and some of the extracurricular activities they offered. "We have a lot of cool clubs here," she said. "You should join the robotics club. They're always looking for new members, and you seem like you'd fit in. Plus, I heard they might be doing something with NASA this year." The mention of NASA caught Malik's attention. "Really?" he asked, his curiosity piqued. Zoe nodded enthusiastically. "Yeah, we're starting a new project with some students from a local college. I think they're looking for kids who are into science and technology. You'd definitely be a good fit for that." Malik couldn't believe it. It felt like fate. He had just arrived, and here was an opportunity to get involved in something he was passionate about, something connected to his mom's work at NASA. That afternoon, Malik found himself sitting in the robotics club room, surrounded by unfamiliar faces. Zoe had introduced him to the group, and they all seemed friendly enough, but Malik still felt like an outsider. However, he couldn't ignore the excitement bubbling inside him. The room was filled with parts and machines, tools, circuits, wires, all the things he had always been fascinated by. As he looked around, he couldn't help but feel a sense of belonging. This was where he wanted to be. These were the kinds of people who understood the language of science and technology, who shared his love for engineering and space exploration. It wasn't the same as his old life, but it was a good start. The club advisor, Mr. Reynolds, walked into the room and clapped his hands to get everyone's attention. "All right, everyone, gather around," he said. "We've got some exciting news today. We've been selected to collaborate with NASA on a special project. We'll be working on building prototypes for a new rover design. It's a huge opportunity, and we'll need all hands on deck." Malik's heart raced. Working on a project with NASA? This was beyond anything he could have imagined. He could already see the possibilities. What if he could be a part of this? What if this was the opportunity that would help him move closer to his dream of working at NASA? Mr. Reynolds looked around the room, his eyes settling on Malik. "You, Malik," he said, gesturing toward him. "I heard you're new here, but you seem like someone with a lot of potential. You interested in joining the project?" Malik nodded, almost too quickly. "Definitely," he said, a spark of excitement in his voice. Over the next few weeks, Malik threw himself into the project. It wasn't easy at first. He had to learn the ins and outs of the rover design, how to work with new technology, and how to communicate with people who had more experience than he did. But every challenge only made him more determined. This was his chance to prove to himself, and to others, that he could do this. He worked late into the evenings, sometimes staying at the school until the janitor came to lock up, absorbed in the design process. His mom noticed the change in him, the way his eyes would light up when he talked about the project. She saw that spark of determination in him, the same one she had when she started working at NASA. "You're really going for it, huh?" she said one night, as Malik sat at the kitchen table, sketching out a new design for the rover's wheels. Malik smiled. "Yeah, I am. I don't want to just dream about working at NASA. I want to be part of something real. This is my chance." His mom nodded, a proud smile on her face. "I'm proud of you, Malik. You're doing great." As Malik worked alongside his new friends, he began to feel a sense of connection to this new place, this new chapter in his life. It wasn't perfect, there were still days when he missed his old home, his old friends, but the excitement he felt about the project with NASA helped him see the possibilities in front of him. Maybe, just maybe, this move was the best thing that had ever happened to him. He wasn't sure where the road would take him next, but for the first time since the move, Malik felt ready to face whatever came his way. The first few weeks of the NASA rover project had been everything Malik had hoped for. He was immersed in the design work, meeting new people who shared his passion for space exploration, and feeling the thrill of working on something that could potentially make a real impact. But as the weeks passed, the excitement began to wear off. The reality of the work set in, and Malik found himself facing challenges he hadn't expected. The first real test came one Friday afternoon, just before the weekend. Malik was sitting at a table in the robotics club room, sketching out a design for the rover's solar panel system when Mr. Reynolds, the club advisor, walked in holding a folder full of papers. "All right, team," Mr. Reynolds said, his voice carrying a tone of seriousness that immediately grabbed Malik's attention. "It's time to take things up a notch. NASA has given us the chance to present our rover prototype at a regional science fair next month. It's a big opportunity to showcase our work to some influential people in the field. But before we do that, we need to make sure our design is solid." Malik felt a sudden tightness in his chest. A presentation? In front of people from NASA? He had never been the type to enjoy public speaking or showing off his work. The thought of standing in front of a group of experts, especially ones who worked at NASA, made his stomach turn. Mr. Reynolds continued, unaware of Malik's internal turmoil. "We'll need each of you to take ownership of different parts of the project. Malik, I want you to take the lead on designing the rover's mobility system. You've got a good head for mechanical engineering, and I think you're the perfect person for this job." Malik's heart raced as he nodded, trying to hide the fact that he was feeling overwhelmed. The pressure was mounting, and the thought of leading a key part of the project made him feel like he was in over his head. But he couldn't back down now. He had come this far, and he wasn't about to let fear hold him back. That evening, as Malik sat at his desk in his room, surrounded by notes and sketches, he couldn't shake the feeling that he was about to fail. The design he had been working on seemed to be missing something, some crucial piece that would make it work. Every time he thought he had figured it out, another problem popped up. The wheels wouldn't turn the way they were supposed to. The weight distribution was all wrong. He felt like he was running in circles, trying to catch up with the clock. As the days passed, the pressure only intensified. Malik began to doubt himself. Was he really cut out for this? What if the project failed? What if the whole team blamed him? He couldn't help but remember the first day of school, when everyone had laughed at the idea of his mom working at NASA. He wondered if that same feeling of being judged, of being an outsider, would follow him into this project. Zoe noticed the change in him. She could see that Malik was becoming more withdrawn, more distant. One day, after school, she caught up with him outside the robotics room. "Hey, Malik," Zoe said gently, her voice soft with concern. "You've been really quiet lately. You good?" Malik forced a smile, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Yeah, I'm fine. Just, a little overwhelmed with the project. There's a lot riding on this, and I don't know if I can pull it off." Zoe raised an eyebrow, clearly not buying his attempt at brushing it off. "Malik, listen to me. You've been doing amazing work so far. Yeah, it's tough, but that's part of the process. You've got the skills. You just need to trust yourself. You're not alone in this." Malik stared at the ground, unsure of what to say. The weight of his doubts pressed heavily on him. What if I mess up? What if everyone finds out I'm just pretending to know what I'm doing? Zoe placed a hand on his shoulder, her grip firm and reassuring. "You're not pretending. You're learning. Everyone here is learning. That's the whole point of this project, right? We're pushing ourselves to do something great, even if we don't have all the answers right away." Malik looked up at her, her words sinking in. "You really think I can do this?" Zoe nodded. "I know you can. And I believe in you. Don't let the pressure get to you. Just take it one step at a time. We're all in this together." The next day, Malik arrived at the robotics club room early, determined to push past the self-doubt that had been holding him back. He had made a decision. He wasn't going to let fear control him anymore. He was going to take Zoe's advice and focus on the process, not the outcome. He spread out his sketches on the table, analyzing each one carefully. There was still a lot to fix, but for the first time in days, he saw possibilities instead of problems. The wheels were still tricky, but Malik had an idea for a new design. He started making adjustments, tweaking the weight distribution, and thinking about how to balance the rover's movement. It wasn't perfect yet, but he was getting closer. When the rest of the team arrived, Malik was already deep into the work. Zoe smiled when she saw the determination on his face. "Looks like you're back on track," she said. Malik grinned, feeling a spark of confidence he hadn't felt in a while. "Yeah. I think I've got it. This rover's going to work." The following weeks were a blur of activity. The pressure to get everything perfect was still there, but Malik had found a new rhythm. With the support of Zoe and the rest of the team, he pushed forward. Slowly but surely, the rover prototype started to come together. The wheels moved smoothly, the weight distribution was balanced, and the mobility system began to function just the way Malik had envisioned. When the day of the regional science fair finally arrived, Malik stood at the front of the room, feeling the familiar nerves return. The room was filled with people, scientists, engineers, teachers, and students, each one eager to see the students' work. Malik's hands were sweaty as he adjusted his tie and glanced over at Zoe, who gave him an encouraging nod. He was ready. As the presentation began, Malik's nerves started to fade. He talked about the rover, explaining the design and the challenges they had faced along the way. With every word, he grew more confident. By the time the presentation ended, he could see the impressed looks on the faces of the judges. Afterward, Mr. Reynolds came up to him, his face beaming with pride. "You did it, Malik. You really pulled this off. I knew you had it in you." Malik smiled, his heart swelling with pride. He had done it. The fear, the self-doubt, it was all in the past. He had faced his first big challenge, and he had come out on top. Malik sat quietly at his desk in the robotics club room, watching the final prototype of the rover as it rolled across the test track they had set up. The wheels moved smoothly, the rover's solar panels caught the light just as planned, and the whole team cheered as the rover made its way to the finish line without a hitch. It was a moment of victory, a tangible result of months of hard work, collaboration, and problem-solving. Malik had never felt prouder of something he had worked on. "Great job, everyone!" Mr. Reynolds exclaimed, clapping his hands. "We've made it. You all should be proud. This project is going to be a game-changer, and you've all played a huge part in it." The team gathered around, exchanging high-fives and smiles. Malik felt a rush of excitement, but also a strange sense of uncertainty. This moment was a victory, but Malik knew it was only one step in a much larger journey. The project with NASA was just the beginning. He had come so far, but he couldn't shake the feeling that there was so much more waiting for him, so much more he needed to learn. As the group began to break up, Malik's phone buzzed. It was a message from his mom. "Mom, Malik, I need to talk to you. Come by the office after school, please. It's important." Malik's stomach tightened. His mom never asked him to come to the office unless something was serious. He glanced around the room at his friends, but his mind was already racing. What could it be? Was something wrong? He quickly packed up his things and headed out of the robotics club room, his mind a whirlwind of possibilities. He arrived at his mom's office building just as the sun was beginning to set, casting a warm orange glow over the city. As he walked through the front doors, the familiar feeling of the NASA campus washed over him. The building, with its sleek modern design and large glass windows, always felt like a place of possibilities, a place where dreams could come true. Malik took the elevator up to the third floor, where his mom worked. She was in her office when he walked in, her desk covered with papers and a large whiteboard behind her filled with notes and calculations. She looked up and smiled when she saw him, but there was something in her eyes, something that made Malik uneasy. "Hey, Malik," his mom said, standing up from her desk and gesturing for him to sit down. "I'm glad you could make it. I have something important to share with you." Malik sat down, his heart pounding. "What's going on, Mom? You sound serious." She nodded, her smile fading slightly as she took a deep breath. "I've been offered a big opportunity. NASA wants me to head a new project, an international mission to study the moon's surface. It's a huge deal, Malik. It's the kind of thing I've always dreamed of being a part of. And they want me to lead it." Malik felt his jaw drop. His mom had always been a source of inspiration for him, but he had never imagined she could be leading something so big, so groundbreaking. This was incredible. "That's amazing, Mom," Malik said, his voice full of excitement. But even as the words left his mouth, he could sense that something was off. His mom's expression wasn't as jubilant as it should have been. She was looking at him as if waiting for something, waiting for him to say or do something. "But," Malik added, sensing the shift in the air. She exhaled slowly, running a hand through her hair. "It's not that simple, Malik. The project is a big responsibility. It will require a lot of time, more than I've ever given to anything else before. And it means traveling around the world, working with teams from different countries, and being away from home for long periods. It's going to be a huge commitment." Malik's heart sank. He had always known that his mom's job was demanding, but the idea of her being gone for extended periods of time terrified him. He had grown used to the quiet moments they shared at home, the times when it was just the two of them, comforting each other after a long day. The thought of her being away, working on such a high-profile mission, made him feel lonely. I don't know, Mom, Malik said, his voice tinged with uncertainty. That sounds like a lot. What about us? What about me? His mom's face softened, and she walked over to him, sitting down beside him. I know this is a big change, Malik. And I want you to understand that I'm not doing this to leave you behind. This opportunity is a once-in-a-lifetime chance for me, and I'm going to do everything I can to balance it with being here for you. But you need to know that things are going to be different. There are going to be times when I won't be around as much. Malik nodded slowly, trying to process everything. His mom had always been there for him, and the thought of her not being there when he needed her most was hard to accept. But he also knew how important this was to her. Just like he was chasing his dreams, she was chasing hers. It was a difficult thing to come to terms with, but Malik had to find a way to support her, just as she had always supported him. I get it, Mom, Malik said after a long pause. I'm proud of you. I know this is something you've worked for your whole life. His mom smiled at him, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. Thank you, Malik. I need you to be strong for both of us, okay? Malik took a deep breath and nodded. I will, Mom. I promise. As Malik walked back home that evening, his mind was swirling with emotions. His mom's news was both exciting and terrifying. On the one hand, he was proud of her, so proud. She was living her dream, achieving things that most people could only imagine. But on the other hand, he couldn't help but feel like he was losing something. The idea of being without her, of facing everything on his own, was a lot to handle. But he also knew this was his moment to grow. His mom was chasing her dreams, and he had to chase his own. He couldn't keep relying on her forever. This was his time to step up, to take the lessons she had taught him and apply them to his own life. As Malik entered his room that night, he looked at the sketches of the rover project still pinned to his wall. It was a reminder of how far he had come, of how much he had already achieved. He had dreams too. And just like his mom, he was going to work to make them come true, no matter how challenging it might be. Tomorrow, he would dive even deeper into the rover project. And maybe, just maybe, he could find a way to combine his passion for space with his love for engineering. It was all coming together, step by step, just as his mom's journey had. The following weeks after his mom's news felt like a blur. Malik was torn between his pride for her achievements and the quiet anxiety about how things were changing at home. The more he thought about it, the more he realized that he was standing at a crossroads in his own life. The rover project had been one of the most fulfilling things he'd ever worked on, but now it felt like it was just one part of a much larger picture. And there were times when he felt like he wasn't quite sure where he fit into that picture anymore. One morning, as Malik walked into the robotics club room, he was met with a surprising sight. The team was already gathered around, huddled in a circle, looking at something on the table. Malik's curiosity piqued, and he walked over to see what was going on. Check this out, Malik. Zoe said, looking up from the table with a grin. We got invited to a special seminar next week, an exclusive one at NASA. They're bringing in engineers and scientists from all over the world to talk about the latest in rover technology. They even invited us to present our work. Can you believe that? Malik's heart skipped a beat. This was it, the moment he had been working toward, the chance to share their project with people who could make a real difference in their futures. It was both thrilling and terrifying. Wait, we're presenting? Malik asked, his voice a little shaky. In front of all those experts. Zoe laughed and nudged him. You're the lead on the mobility system, Malik. Of course you're presenting. You're ready. Malik felt a knot tighten in his stomach. He had never been comfortable with public speaking, and the thought of presenting in front of such a distinguished audience made his palms sweat. But he couldn't back out now. This was his moment. This was what he had worked for, even if it scared him to death. "I'll do it," Malik said, his voice more confident than he felt. "But I'll need all of you to help me prep. There's no way I can do this alone." The group nodded in agreement, and from that moment on, they dove into preparation mode. It wasn't just about tweaking the rover's design anymore, it was about presenting it to people who might actually be able to take their work to the next level. For Malik, this meant stepping up in ways he hadn't anticipated. Every moment he spent refining the rover, every late-night discussion with Zoe, every question he had to answer about the rover's capabilities, these things pushed him out of his comfort zone, bit by bit. The week flew by in a whirlwind of meetings, late-night coding, and back-and-forth brainstorming sessions. As the seminar drew closer, Malik felt the pressure mounting. He spent hours rehearsing his part of the presentation, practicing the technical jargon, perfecting his explanations. But every time he stood in front of the mirror, practicing what he would say, his mind went blank. How could he make the experts understand that this wasn't just a school project to him? That this was his future? On the night before the seminar, Malik sat in his room, staring at his notes. He had put in all the work, but doubts still lingered. Was he good enough? Could he really stand in front of some of the most brilliant engineers in the world and present his work with confidence? His phone buzzed, and Malik picked it up to see a message from Zoe. "Zoe, don't stress too much, Malik. You've got this. We all believe in you. Just remember why you started this project in the first place. The rover isn't just a robot, it's your dream coming true. And we're all in this together." Malik smiled as he read the message. Zoe's words were exactly what he needed to hear. He wasn't doing this alone. He had a team, friends who believed in him, who had seen his growth and knew what he was capable of. That was all the reassurance he needed. The next day, Malik stood backstage at the NASA seminar, his heart pounding in his chest. The room was filled with some of the brightest minds in the world, engineers, scientists, and innovators who had worked on some of the most significant space missions in history. It felt like a dream. And yet, here he was, just a high school student with a rover that he and his team had built, about to present in front of all of them. Zoe gave him a thumbs up as she walked past him, smiling to herself. "You've got this," she whispered. Malik took a deep breath and walked onto the stage. As he stood behind the podium, his gaze swept across the crowd. For a moment, everything felt blurry. The room was full of faces, some curious, others skeptical. But the longer Malik stood there, the more he felt himself settle. This was his moment. This was his chance to prove to himself, and to everyone else, that he belonged in this space. "Good afternoon," Malik began, his voice steady. "My name is Malik Jackson, and I'm here to present our team's work on a rover prototype designed for space exploration." As he spoke, Malik's nerves slowly started to fade away. He focused on the rover in front of him, the same rover that he had helped build from the ground up. He talked about the design process, the challenges they had faced, and the lessons they had learned along the way. He spoke with passion, explaining the intricacies of the rover's mobility system, its solar panels, and its ability to withstand the harsh conditions of space. As Malik got into the rhythm of the presentation, his confidence grew. The audience was listening, nodding along, and asking insightful questions. He could feel the energy in the room shifting. This wasn't just a high school project anymore. This was real. This was important. After the presentation, several people came up to him and the team, offering congratulations and asking for more details about the rover. Malik felt his chest swell with pride. They had done it. They had succeeded in showing the world what they were capable of. And for Malik, it wasn't just about the accolades. It was about realizing that he was no longer the kid who had been laughed at for saying his mom worked at NASA. He was a part of something bigger now. He had earned his place at the table. That night, Malik sat in his room, looking at the email from his mom that had come in earlier that day. It was a message of pride, a message of encouragement. She had been watching the seminar live, and she had sent him a note that made his heart swell. "Mom, I'm so proud of you, Malik. You've come so far, and I can see that you're becoming the person I always knew you could be. I'm proud of your team, and I'm proud of you. Keep going. I can't wait to see where you go next." Malik stared at the screen, feeling a sense of accomplishment wash over him. His mom's words, along with the success of the seminar, reminded him of just how far he had come. It wasn't about the laughs or the doubts. It was about taking those things and turning them into fuel for his dreams. The journey wasn't easy, but Malik knew one thing for sure: he was only getting started. The weeks following the seminar felt like a whirlwind. Malik had barely wrapped his mind around what had just happened when the next set of opportunities came rushing in. Emails flooded his inbox from various universities, including some of the most prestigious engineering schools in the country. They had seen his presentation, and they were impressed. Some even wanted to offer him scholarships. It was overwhelming, to say the least. He couldn't remember a time when he had felt more on the edge of something. The road ahead seemed full of possibilities, but it also felt like an uncertain, uncharted path. Each offer, each invitation, each scholarship made him feel like he was on the cusp of something big. But what did it all mean for his future? What was the next step? Malik had always dreamed of becoming an engineer, but now that it seemed within his reach, the pressure to make the right decision weighed heavily on him. The question loomed in his mind: did he want to go to college immediately after high school? Or did he want to take some time to focus on the rover project and explore his options further, maybe even work alongside some of the experts he had met at NASA? One afternoon, Malik sat at his kitchen table, scrolling through the list of emails. His mom had been away on a mission to another country for a few weeks now, and while she was still supportive through texts and calls, he had been mostly on his own. He missed her presence, her constant reassurance, her guiding hand. But now, more than ever, Malik realized that this was his time. He had to start making decisions for himself. "Malik, you okay?" His dad's voice pulled him out of his thoughts. Malik looked up to see his dad standing in the doorway, his eyes filled with concern. "Yeah, just a lot on my mind," Malik replied, trying to sound casual. He pushed his phone aside and leaned back in his chair. "I've got all these scholarship offers coming in, and I'm not sure what to do. I mean, it's like everything I've worked for is suddenly here, and I don't know if I'm ready for it." His dad smiled softly and walked into the kitchen, pulling out a chair to sit beside Malik. "I get it. It's a big deal, man. But the truth is, there's no one right choice. What matters is what you want to do and where you think you can grow the most." Malik sighed, feeling the weight of his dad's words. "I know, but I just feel like I'm being pulled in so many directions. Everyone expects me to be this huge success, to take these opportunities, but what if I'm not ready for all that? What if I don't know what I really want yet?" His dad chuckled and leaned back. "Son, no one ever feels completely ready. You know how long it took me to get to where I am today. I made plenty of mistakes along the way. But I kept going. The key is knowing that you can't predict every single step. You just have to trust yourself to make the best decision for you, in this moment." Malik absorbed his dad's words, but the uncertainty didn't go away. He wanted to make the right choice, but how could he when the stakes felt so high? The world of space engineering, technology, and academia had suddenly opened up to him in ways he had never imagined, and the fear of making the wrong move was daunting. How could he possibly choose the right path when every decision seemed so huge? The next day, Malik decided to go for a run. He always found that clearing his mind with a bit of exercise helped him think more clearly. As he jogged through his neighborhood, the cool air hitting his face, he thought about how far he had come. He thought about the first day when he stood in front of his classmates and declared that his mom worked at NASA. He remembered the laughter, the teasing, the doubt. And now, here he was, in a place where he was being taken seriously, where he had opportunities that most people his age could only dream of. But even as he ran, Malik felt the pull of uncertainty. Was he ready to handle everything that was coming his way? Could he handle the pressure? He didn't want to let anyone down, least of all himself. He wanted to succeed, but was success really about these scholarships and prestigious schools? Or was it about something more personal, something deeper? As he made his way back home, Malik stopped at the park near his house. He sat on a bench, letting the cool breeze brush against his skin. And it was in that quiet moment, alone with his thoughts, that the answer began to form in his mind. Maybe it wasn't about being ready. Maybe it wasn't about what other people expected of him. Maybe it was just about taking the next step, one step at a time. He didn't need to have everything figured out right now. He just needed to trust in his passion for engineering and space exploration, and trust that the decisions he made, guided by that passion, would lead him where he needed to go. Later that night, Malik sat down at his desk with a piece of paper and a pen. He started to write out his options, the scholarships, the opportunities to continue working on the rover project, the chance to stay in school a little longer and develop his skills before diving into college life. As he wrote, he began to realize that the choice didn't have to be so black and white. Maybe he could take a gap year, maybe even work at NASA for a while and learn from the professionals who had been doing this for years. Maybe it was time to focus on his growth as an engineer first, instead of jumping into school immediately. Malik wasn't sure exactly what the next step would look like, but he felt something inside him click. The road ahead was long, and it wouldn't always be easy, but he was ready for it. No matter where he ended up, Malik knew that this was his journey, and he was going to take it one step at a time. The next morning, Malik made the call to accept one of the scholarship offers, a decision he knew would allow him to explore more of what he loved without rushing into it all. He didn't have all the answers yet, but for the first time in a long while, he felt at peace with that uncertainty. The future was full of endless possibilities, and he was finally ready to embrace them. That afternoon, Malik's phone buzzed again. It was a text from his mom, who had just landed back from her mission. "Mom, I'm so proud of you, Malik. Take your time. Don't rush. You'll figure it out." Malik smiled at the message, feeling his heart swell. He knew his mom was right. No one ever truly knew exactly where they were going, but as long as they were moving forward, they were always on the right path. The moment Malik walked into the school building on the first day of his senior year, he felt a strange mix of excitement and apprehension. It was the year that was supposed to define everything, the year where decisions had to be made, plans had to be set, and dreams had to be shaped into something real. It felt like a fresh start, but also like a heavy weight pressing down on his chest. Ever since the NASA seminar and the scholarship offers, Malik had been wrestling with the question of what his future really looked like. He had made the decision to accept one of the scholarships, but it wasn't a clear path. He had chosen to attend college next year but decided to take a gap year first to work on his skills and get real-world experience with a few space technology companies. Even with that decision made, the uncertainty hadn't fully faded. Would that be the right move? Was he ready to fully embrace the next step? When Malik walked into the robotics club room for the first time this year, the feeling of familiarity washed over him. His teammates were already gathering around their workstations, exchanging ideas, and talking about their new projects. It was comforting to see all of them, especially after such a long break. But Malik couldn't shake the feeling that things had changed, inside him and around him. Zoe was the first to notice him standing in the doorway. She smiled and waved him over, her eyes lighting up when she saw him. "Malik. You made it. We've been waiting for you," she said, pulling out the chair next to hers. "How's everything? Ready to dive back in?" Malik smiled back, but his mind was elsewhere. "Yeah, I'm ready. I'm just figuring some things out, you know. Everything's kind of moving so fast." Zoe studied him for a moment, sensing his unease. She reached over and placed a hand on his shoulder. "Hey, whatever's on your mind, we'll figure it out together. That's what teammates are for, right? Her words, as always, were a comforting balm to Malik's worries. For a moment, he felt like he could breathe again. But as he looked around at the faces of the team, each of them moving forward in their own lives, he couldn't shake the feeling that things might not be the same anymore. Not just in the club, but in the world around him. Everything felt different now. He wasn't the same Malik who had walked into this room last year, unsure of himself, ready to prove everyone wrong. Now, he was faced with the reality of making real decisions that could change his life forever. The first few weeks of school flew by in a blur of classes, practice sessions, and meetings with guidance counselors. Malik found himself increasingly isolated, unsure of how to balance his commitment to the robotics team with his new responsibilities outside of school. He still spent hours at the robotics club, working on the rover project and helping with design tweaks, but the pull of the real world, the one where he was preparing for college and his future career, was always there in the background. One afternoon, after a particularly intense meeting with the team, Malik found himself walking down the hall, lost in thought. The halls felt quieter now, as though everyone was moving forward without him. He could hear the laughter of students in the distance, the chatter of friends catching up between classes. But for Malik, it was as though time had shifted in some subtle way. The world around him felt like it was changing, and he wasn't sure how to keep up. Just as he reached his locker, he heard a familiar voice. "Malik, hey." It was Marcus, one of his old friends from middle school. They'd lost touch for a while, but Malik was always happy to see him. "Long time no see. How've you been, man?" Malik smiled. "Hey, Marcus. I've been good, just busy, you know. A lot of things happening." Marcus raised an eyebrow. "I hear you're doing some big stuff with that rover project. That's awesome, man. NASA, right?" "Yeah, it's been crazy. Things have been moving fast, but I'm figuring it all out," Malik replied, running a hand through his hair. "I'm just trying to balance everything. There's a lot going on right now." Marcus nodded knowingly. "I get it, man. High school can be like that, feels like everything's pulling you in a million directions. But you've got this. You've always had this." Malik paused, surprised by how much Marcus's words comforted him. He didn't always know where he stood with his friends, but hearing that reassurance from Marcus made him realize something important. Maybe Malik didn't have to have all the answers right now. Maybe all he needed was to take one step at a time, even if it was a little uncertain. "Thanks, man. I really appreciate that," Malik said, feeling a weight lift from his shoulders. "I think I just needed to hear that." Marcus smiled. "Anytime, bro. You know where to find me." That evening, Malik sat down at his desk, his laptop open in front of him. He stared at the screen, unsure of what to do next. His scholarship letters were sitting on his desk, unopened, still waiting for his decision. The emails from NASA were still sitting in his inbox, offering opportunities that he had dreamed about since he was young. But the real question, one that had been gnawing at him for weeks, was, what kind of future did he want for himself? Malik clicked through the email threads from the university and the companies he had worked with. He thought about his mom's advice, the things she had told him about following his dreams, but also taking the time to figure out what those dreams truly meant. She had never rushed him. She had always been there to offer support, but the decision was his to make. As he closed the laptop, Malik realized something he hadn't truly understood before: the next chapter wasn't about rushing towards something or trying to prove anyone wrong. It was about building something that mattered, something that came from his heart and his own drive. He stood up, stretching his arms above his head. The world wasn't waiting for him to have all the answers. It was waiting for him to take the next step. The following weeks were a blur of late nights, emails, and conversations with people who had walked the path Malik was now considering. But slowly, the pieces of the puzzle started to fall into place. Malik made decisions about the next steps in his education and career, balancing the need for real-world experience with the value of formal education. He accepted a deferred scholarship and began planning a gap year that would allow him to continue working on the rover and other engineering projects with NASA. As he sat in the robotics club one late afternoon, looking at the rover they had built together, Malik realized that he had come a long way from that shy, uncertain kid who had stood in front of his classmates and proudly said that his mom worked at NASA. He was no longer just trying to prove something to others. He was working towards something bigger, something that mattered to him. The road ahead was still uncertain, but Malik knew one thing for sure: he was ready. The sun was just beginning to set, casting a golden glow over the city as Malik stood at the edge of the launch pad. The roar of the engines reverberated in the distance, filling the air with excitement. He had come a long way from the shy, uncertain teenager who had once stood in his high school classroom, uncertain of his place in the world. Now, he was about to embark on something bigger, something that would take him to the stars. For the past year, Malik had worked tirelessly on his projects with NASA, gaining hands-on experience and learning from the brightest minds in the field. He had spent countless hours perfecting designs, troubleshooting problems, and collaborating with engineers who had once seemed like untouchable giants. But now, as he stood here, the reality of what he had accomplished hit him in a way he had never imagined. He had achieved so much in such a short time, but more than anything, Malik was beginning to realize that the true achievement wasn't the accolades or the recognition. It was the journey, the growth, the learning, the moments of doubt and the courage to push forward even when the path seemed unclear. Malik turned around to see Zoe, his closest friend from the robotics team, running toward him, her face alight with excitement. She had come to visit him at the launch site, having been one of the few people who truly understood the journey he had been on. "Hey, Zoe," Malik said, smiling. "I didn't expect you to be here." "Are you kidding?" Zoe laughed. "I wouldn't miss this for the world. I mean, NASA, rockets, and you getting to launch your first project. It's like a dream come true." Malik chuckled and shook his head. "It still feels surreal. I've been working on this for so long, but now that it's happening, it feels like I've only just begun." Zoe stood next to him, gazing at the rocket that was about to take off. "It's amazing how far you've come, Malik. You've done everything you set out to do, and more. I'm so proud of you." "Thanks, Zoe," Malik said quietly. "But honestly, it hasn't always been easy. There were so many moments when I doubted myself, when I didn't know if I was ready for everything that was happening. And even now, there's this part of me that feels like I'm just getting started." Zoe smiled, her eyes warm. "That's the thing about dreams, they never really stop. They keep evolving, and so do we. You've already achieved so much, but you're still just beginning your journey." Malik looked at her, feeling a sense of gratitude wash over him. "You've always believed in me, Zoe. Back when no one else did. I couldn't have gotten this far without your support." "You've always had it in you, Malik," Zoe said softly. "All I did was remind you of it when you forgot." As the countdown began, Malik's thoughts drifted back to that moment when he had stood in front of his classmates, declaring that his mom worked at NASA. The laughter, the teasing, the doubt. At that time, he had been unsure of his place in the world, unsure of his abilities. But now, as he looked around, he realized that everything had changed. He had proven them wrong, yes, but more importantly, he had proven something to himself. That he was capable. That he could achieve whatever he set his mind to. That the path ahead, no matter how uncertain, was worth walking. The rocket's engines roared to life, and Malik could feel the vibrations in the air as the countdown reached its final seconds. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. With a sudden burst of energy, the rocket shot into the sky, ascending toward the stars. Malik watched in awe as it disappeared into the vastness of the atmosphere, his heart racing with the thrill of the moment. Zoe stood beside him, her eyes wide. "That's it, Malik. Your work is up there. It's real. Malik nodded, a sense of pride filling his chest. But as the rocket climbed higher, he felt something else, something deeper than the excitement of the moment. It was a quiet sense of fulfillment, of knowing that he had followed his passion, of knowing that he had worked hard to get here. It wasn't just about the launch, or the project, it was about the journey that had led him to this moment. As they watched the rocket disappear into the sky, Malik turned to Zoe and said, "This is just the beginning, isn't it?" Zoe smiled. "You bet it is." Months later, Malik found himself walking across the stage at graduation, the weight of the moment sinking in. He had finished high school, but it didn't feel like an ending. It felt like another beginning. The next chapter in his life was already waiting for him, full of possibilities, challenges, and adventures that he couldn't even begin to imagine. As he shook hands with the principal, Malik's mom stood in the crowd, a proud smile on her face. She had always been there for him, through every struggle, every success, every moment of doubt. And now, as he took that first step into his future, he knew that her unwavering belief in him had been the foundation of everything he had achieved. Later that evening, as Malik sat in the quiet of his room, reflecting on the day, he received a message from his mom. "Mom, I'm so proud of you, Malik. You've come so far. And I know this is only the beginning. Whatever you decide next, I'll always be there for you. Love you." Malik smiled as he read the message. He felt a deep sense of peace, knowing that no matter where life took him, he was ready. He had a dream. He had the passion, the drive, and the skills to make that dream a reality. And more than anything, he had the courage to keep going, no matter how uncertain the future seemed. A few years later, Malik sat at his desk at NASA, staring at a monitor displaying a live feed of the Mars rover he had worked so hard to develop. The rover, a culmination of years of work, was finally on its way to the red planet. As Malik watched it move across the Martian surface, he couldn't help but think back to that day when he first stood in front of his classmates and declared that his mom worked at NASA. Back then, the idea of working for NASA seemed impossible. But now, it was his reality. And as the rover transmitted data back to Earth, Malik realized that the final frontier wasn't just a place. It was a state of mind. It was the uncharted territory of his own potential, and he had just begun to explore it. Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. This story might just spark a new beginning. What's one thing that always pushes you forward, even when things get tough?